Today's episode of Shockwaves is brought to you by Shudder. Brought to you by AMC Network, Shudder is not only a premium streaming video service, but an experience unlike any other. Created for fans of all degrees of thriller, suspense, and horror, Shudder is home to the largest and fastest-growing human-curated selection of high-quality, spine-tingling, and provocative films, TV series, and originals. And there's always something new and unexpected for Shudder members to explore.
New this week is Small Town Killers from the director of Night Watch and Just Another Love Story. When hapless and horny husbands Ib and Ed grow bored with their humdrum lives, they make a rash decision to hire a hitman to kill their wives. Quickly regretting their dumb decision, Ib and Ed try to call Igor off, but he won't be dissuaded. Things get even worse when their wives learn of the plot and hire their own assassin. Oli Borndal's hilariously dark comedy is definitely not for the pro-PC crowd. Stream now only on Shudder.
Yeah, Shudder is available for $4.99 a month or $49.99 with an annual membership, but our listeners can get a free month by entering the promo code SHOCK at checkout. Once again, that code is SHOCK at checkout. Go to Shudder.com today and find the best collection of thrillers, suspense, and horror available to stream anywhere.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the Knoxville Horror Film Festival. The Knoxville Horror Film Festival returns October 20th through 22nd for its 9th annual celebration of sinister cinema at Regal Cinemas downtown West 8. Highlights of this year's fest include a 4K restoration of Suspiria, Blade of the Immortal, Better Watch Out, The Endless, and a 40th anniversary House Sue screening. In total, you can see 10 features, over 30 shorts, and witness the insanity of the Grindhouse Grindout filmmaking competition. Tickets and more info can be found at www.knoxvillehorrorfest.com. Again, that is www.knoxvillehorrorfest.com.
Okay, and welcome to episode 67 of Shockwaves. I'm one of your hosts, Rob G. Sitting with me is Mr. Elric Kane.
I'm still here.
You're still here.
How many episodes have we done?
67.
67.
Not including 140.
How many years
Killer
is that,
POV.
Man? How many years?
4 or 5. We're in it for. we're in it to win it for
That's
life.
Like
Yeah.
an eighth of our existence.
I know.
Or some shit.
I've spent with you guys.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
Also, Rebekah McKendry, welcome.
What up?
Hi.
How's it going?
No Ryan Turek. He was going to come back, but he decided to do the family thing before he goes off to make this little movie called Halloween.
He's traveling a lot.
Making
so.
Halloween, huh?
And congrats to him. He's got some big changes in his life that we're all very happy about.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
But lot to talk about. We're going to select our 31 days of Halloween picks for you because October is right around the corner. We're going to have a guest on later that we've been wanting to have since the beginning of Killer POV, our original show. And so a lot to talk about there. A couple top of the show mentions. Let's remind you guys about our social media. I just noticed there's a slew of new reviews on iTunes, which is always a pleasant surprise to stumble on that. So if you haven't already, please go over to our iTunes page and rate and review us. We're also all over social media. You could find us on Facebook and Instagram as Shockwaves Podcast, and we're on Twitter as Shockwaves Pod. So, hit us up on all those mediums, spread the word, and we really appreciate it. So let's keep this conversation going. That's number one. Let's see. What else can we talk about? Kevin McTurk, friend of the show.
Yeah.
Normally, we do not pimp or push Kickstarter campaigns because then we have to do them all. But
not many people make films with puppets.
Exactly.
Yeah, Kevin does really cool stuff.
Kevin is one of the only people that does this. He works for Spectral Motion, and but he also does these amazing films. We had reviewed one called The Mill at Calder's End, which had a puppet of Barbara Steele, played by Barbara Steele.
Yeah.
And it was like a Hammer film, but done with puppets, and really good.
It is excellent, and because we loved that one so much, we thought we'd mention he's just finishing up a Kickstarter for his newest one called The Haunted Swordsman. Also,
I think it's the last week,
right? Yeah, this is the last week right now, and so we just wanted to give him a shout out. If you're interested in really unique things like that. Cause again, like that's what I love is everybody's kind of doing, sometimes people are like pitching the same thing, like, oh, I want to do my zombie movie in the backyard or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that if you do a kick-ass version of it, like The Battery. Yeah. But the point being is there's nobody doing what Kevin does. No. And so that's kind of why, we like to champion people that do the unexpected.
And it's truly like, I look at that and I think of it as kind of the most amazing art because it's something that I look at and I cannot fathom how it's done or how many man hours have to go into it. It's just daunting to look at, but it's so impressive.
Yeah. And he's a good bastard.
He's a good bastard.
So. We're hoping to have him on the show at some point.
Yeah, we should. Yeah. I will also mention quickly, Hellraiser Anthology Volume 2 came out last weekend. There's a story by myself and my husband in that one as well. So please, if you enjoyed the first one, and thank you to all the shockers who picked up our first edition, please pick up the Hellraiser Anthology Graphic Novel Volume 2. In this one, I got to set it in a boxing ring, which was really exciting.
That's cool. Oh, wow. Yeah. That is kind of cool. Last thing I want to mention before we dive into films is somewhat controversial, but I'm going to try to avoid the controversies of all that surround this franchise.
Oh, boy.
There's always a lot of activity on our group. We have the Shockwaves Horror Movie Club that's on Facebook. But what I do want to mention, I'm not going to even mention the franchise or the because it just ruffles too many feathers and it's impossible to have legitimate conversation about that. And that's irrelevant. What is relevant is that the victim of the person who a lot of people usually that's their defense when they're talking about this movie, this filmmaker and the franchise is the victim. And the victim is a gentleman named Nathan Forrest Winters, who was an actor and is a victim of sexual child abuse. And right now he has a GoFundMe campaign because he's trying to start a nonprofit called We Are Their Voice. Specifically, he's trying to only raise, I think it's $5,000 so he can go on a tour to talk in different towns about advocacy for sexual child abuse. And so I think that's a worthy cause. It's somebody that's a victim that wants to help other victims. And the fact this launched in August 3rd, and the fact that he hasn't made his $5,000 goal is kind of disappointing to me, especially because of how many people rally against this particular filmmaker that is responsible for this. And so I already donated. I set aside $25 every month to donate to some charitable event. Just I watch horror movies. There's not much I do in society that I think is really that important. But if I can, throw $25 somewhere, whether it's for suicide prevention or something like this, then I feel like I'm doing something. And so, please, if you are one of the people that rallies against this filmmaker, then I don't see why you can't donate $5 to help Nathan help other people.
And go one step further, even if you do support, even if you're more on the side of, I love the movie, I should go see it, I don't care about the crime. Hey, this is a good reason to balance the karma budget.
Yes, absolutely. There's no reason not to. And so with that cheery change, let's how do we want to do this? Because it's by the time this airs, it'll be a few days prior to October 1st.
Yeah.
And last year, I think all three of us had picked 31 recommendations. We'd done 31 titles. So if you really wanted to do one horror movie a night, you could have done it. I already announced my plan months in advance, and I curated it about a month ago and posted my picks. But I'm gonna cull 10 of these. I am doing horror anthologies. 31 horror anthologies, and people are like, are there really 31? I was like, trust me,
there's way more than that.
Way more. Yes. I had to narrow it down to which 31 I wanted to do. And so I did a pretty good mix of things that I love that are my favorites. Some are traditional, like Trick or Treat and Tales of Halloween. And some are ones I've never seen before. I have a little bit of a blind spot with the Amicus ones. And so I've curated 31 horror anthologies, which I think when I posted that, Elric, you were like, that's insane. That's like 150 movies.
Yeah, you timed that by like 4 is what you're actually watching.
Yeah.
Which is craziness.
So I will be writing down our 31 as we go, guys, and we will post these both on the Shockwaves Facebook page and the Shockwaves Movie Club.
We'll create a random order by going one at a time, and even because we're not going to be talking about these early, we're just listing them. And
so they are not in like a curated progression.
This will be now a curated curated. It's going to be a manic.
So it's all right. So we're coming at it with 10 each. Is that how it is?
Yeah, and then there'll be one extra, right?
Yeah, one extra.
How about the one extra is trick or treat?
Yeah, I think that we could all agree on
or
trick
Halloween.
Or treat. So I'm putting trick or treat down for Halloween night, guys.
Yeah, but that's the spot for Halloween 3 every year.
All right. Well, look. Are you recommending Halloween or Halloween 3 in your 10 picks?
No.
Okay, then all right, then the number one will be your choice. Trick or treat, Halloween, or Halloween 3.
I like it.
Okay.
And tell us which ones you choose.
Yes, like that'll be generated by our listeners. And then we're going to pick 10 other ones for you. So, all right, let me kick it off. I'm going with Mario Bava's Black Sabbath.
Nice.
And I'm talking about the Italian version. That's my preferred cut and order of that film. So.
Right on.
Cool. Elric, did you do any theme for yours, by the way?
You'll have to pick it if it emerges.
Okay.
This is actually something I rewatched this week because I was going to talk about it in general, but I'll just list as my first film. And that film is from 1976. It is Alice, Sweet Alice by Alfred Sole. And man, did I like rewatching that movie. I hadn't seen it in a long time and always liked it, but this time it really reminded me of early Romero. It has a shooting style like Romero does, and a very interesting directorial style where you're always noticing the camera really close to characters. But it's actually just super creepy, and it has just a really interesting atmosphere to it. Anyway,
we should get Alfred on soon. He's now a production.
He's
now a production designer. He was working on Castle. He does production design for TV.
He's got like hundreds of credits for production
he's
design
really
and only a couple
too.
for filmmaking.
I actually I met Alfred when I was on the set of Castle as an extra because they wanted Fangoria on there as extras, and so I was there, and he came over and he was like, "I just have to tell you, I was on the cover of Fangoria once, and it's really good to meet you. I'm the production designer." And I was like, "Who are you?" And he was like,
cool.
"Oh, I directed Alice, Sweet Alice." So
get him in. I would love to meet him. I really love this film, and that's my number one.
Nice. So I went with fun films, is how I describe it. Like, because I always think of Halloween as my fun month, so I didn't want to do anything that's ugly or anything that's too heavy. I wanted to do ones that are kind of have some breath to them. So my first pick is I Sell the Dead.
Yeah. Oh, great one, Glenn McQuaid's movie.
Yes.
Yeah, hells yeah. That's a good one, and that's also stars Larry Fessenden and
dude from Lost. Dude from Lost.
Dude from Lost and Lord of the Rings.
The Irish guy.
The Irish guy from Lost and Lord of the Rings. You know who we're talking about.
Right. Okay, my number 2 is the original Tales from the Crypt movie. This is on a double feature that I believe Scream Factory put out with Vault of Horror, which is also a great movie. But Tales from the Crypt is great. It's got I mean, a lot of people remember the TV show, and they specifically remember the Killer Santa Claus, played by Larry Drake. But they do that skit in this original movie, and it's actually much creepier because he just looks like Santa Claus. So there's something kind of creepy about that, and there's just some great. It's just a wonderful anthology, and so I absolutely advocate the original Tales from the Crypt.
It's one of the greatest little shorts, that one.
Oh yeah,
I love it. My second film, which is number 5, is Lucky McKee's May. I feel like sometimes people forget about how great this little movie is, and it's a gem, and her performance is absolutely glorious.
Nice. Number 6 was just recently released to Blu-ray from Scream Factory, and that is Slither.
Number 6 or number 2?
It's my number 2. It's our number 6.
Collective 6 for those scoring at home. Yeah, Slither is so much fun, and I haven't actually watched it on the new Blu-ray yet.
I haven't yet either. That's why I put it down. Is I've got in my living room, I have a stack of Blu-rays that I call my watch list, and so whenever I'm like, what do I want to watch tonight? I look at that shelf, and I've had it sitting there
Rob's
for a while.
got an entire shelf for that. Every time I go to his house, that's the first place I look because it's like this must be the new stuff.
Yeah, new arrivals.
I usually have about 20 items on there. Not always new arrivals. Some of them are blind buys and things like that. But yeah, my watch shelf.
Okay, so my next one, obviously these are all going to be anthologies, but this one is from our friends Jeff Burr and producer Darren Scott. I'm going with From a Whisper to a Scream because this is an anthology unlike any you've seen before. In particular, Clu Gulager, his skit is pretty spectacular. There's just some cool stuff in here, a good cast. And Scream Factory did a great release of this that has a feature-length documentary about how all those guys got together and made movies. So From Whisper to Scream, and Vincent Price is in it. He's kind of in the wraparound. So.
And the story about how they got him in is super fun into the film. My next one is one of my favorite atmospheric films. It's only on a DVD, unfortunately, and that is, it also has a great creepy redhead like Becca.
Just
and that
like
is
me.
Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Put it on the list.
Nice.
Great movie. If you haven't seen it, you'll all thank me.
Let's Scare Jessica. Yeah, that one, what freaked me out about that movie was always the insecticide or the poison that they're using on the trees. Like those scenes were just shocking to me. I don't know why.
That's funny that's what you think about. That's
yeah,
crazy.
I think about the insecticide
always think about insects.
scenes.
That's your thing.
I know.
I think of creepy vampiric redheads. That's
No, the scene with the insecticide. It's like
right.
clouds of poison. Fine. Continuing with mine, let's go with 1988's Parents.
Yeah.
Ooh, I love that movie.
Again, mine are pretty fun. There's a couple that aren't, but I went kind of light and
That's going to balance actually pretty well.
Yeah.
Unplanned.
I think so. Yeah.
like
and
it.
that one's a great Blu-ray from Vestron Video.
Yep.
On that one. Okay, let's see. So now I'm going to start with a bunch that I haven't seen, but that I've heard great things about. So this is one I'm very excited about. It's from the Amicus period, and I'm going with Asylum. And I'm so excited because Severin Films is going to put out this one. Yeah, they've already announced that a while ago. Yeah,
sweet.
And believe it or not, Severin is also. I saw David Gregory, who's a guest on our show and a friend of our show. I saw him at the most recent Son of Monsterpalooza. I bought a few things from his table, and we were talking about Asylum because I wanted to get an HD version of it before, because I don't know if the release date is set yet, but it's definitely later this year. And so I was trying to haggle him into sending me an early disc of it. And he's like, son of a bitch, I saw your list and you didn't pick Theater of the Bizarre, his anthology.
Oh, that's right.
And I'm like, listen, man, put out another Blue and I will watch it.
I really liked the segment, which is Richard Stanley, the Toad one off of that one. I really liked.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, Asylum is one that is very well regarded, and I've heard so many good things about it.
One of my favorites.
And so now that Severin's going to put it out again, that is on my list.
That is a good choice. I'm going with a little bit of Italian giallo and weirdness with What Have They Done to Solange?
Ooh.
Which is a fun film.
Dark.
Yeah, I like that film, but it is pretty dark. And it's got, I didn't know until recent years that Solange is played by, what is her name from?
Oh, is it Camille Keaton?
Yeah,
Keaton,
Camille
from I Spit in Your Grave. Yeah,
I Spit in Your Grave. And I was saying I didn't know until I met her. Until she came to Jump Cut and she had a picture from Solange. I was like, you're Solange?
Yeah.
Now I know what they did. But it's a good film. I like it. It has a little bit of mystery. It is dark. It's definitely not for the happy, but it'll counterbalance your picks. So.
It will. And then you get to follow that up with a slightly lighter, more gory romp, 13 Ghosts, the newer one.
Oh my God, really?
I know. I thought
You're
I'd put it
crazy.
on. I haven't seen it in a long time, and I was like,
either, but
was
I
that
like
in
it.
3D?
I liked it. I remember thinking that Chris Kattan was really funny in it. I remember liking the characters. And one of the classes I'm teaching at USC, I co-teach with the guy who did all of the visual effects in it. And so I keep thinking like, I need to rewatch that. So I was like, you know what? Going on my list. 13 Ghosts from 2001. 2001.
Okay. Alrighty. Let's see. My next one is another one that I've never seen, believe it or not. And that is the original Dead of Night from 1945.
Oh, it got some great stuff. The end segment's awesome.
I also hear that the wraparound is among one of the best.
Yeah, because it's it is kind of the story is the wraparound.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know this one's a little bit tougher to get, but all the ones
I have a copy on DVD.
Well, all the ones that I curated for my own watching, I had to be able to get somehow. And so this one is on Amazon. It's not on Amazon Prime for free, but it is on Amazon. And so my intention is to rent it when I get to Dead of Night 1945.
I have it on a double disc with something called The Queen of Hearts or The Queen of Spades, which I guess is another British movie, but I don't remember it being a really expensive DVD buy. I blind bought that one and it was well worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it's only, I'm looking now on Amazon. It's available for rent for 99 cents.
Oh, totally.
Or to own it for $2.99.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that seems worth it to me. So Dead of Night.
That's almost perfect anthology film. My next one I've recommended here a lot, but the reason I'm putting on this list is because it's now on Amazon Prime in HD, and that is The Haunting of Julia, which has always been really tricky to find.
Also called Full Circle.
Full Circle. And that film, every time I've recommended it, it's been near impossible to find, but it just popped up recently, basically, and it says HD. I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to, though, and it is a great film with a really haunting performance by Mia Farrow as a woman slowly being possessed. I've been talking about it on this show for a long time, so I won't tell you the plot again.
Okay.
Next up on my list, this is a recent one that I don't think a lot of fans saw, but I really enjoyed. Nina Forever.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I liked a lot about that.
Yeah,
cool.
I really did like this one. It's from 2015. It's about a guy whose girlfriend dies. And he kind of, he loved her, but it takes a while for him to move on. And he eventually does. But yet every single time he has sex, her dead kind of bloody body appears in this like geyser-filled gore spurt on the bed.
Yeah.
And how
it's actually quite comic
in
a weird way.
It's a dark comedy, but it's also very sad and kind of romantic at the same time. And it's very much about emotions and being ready to move on. And it really had some charming appeal for me, and I really enjoyed it. And then I kind of just forgotten about it. And a lot of people didn't even see it, I don't think. So Nina Forever from 2015. Did you see this one, Rob?
I did not finish it. And now I just watched it at a time where because I love all the imagery from it. There's, I mean, they had a great ad campaign for it. But I had never finished it. And then I think it was on Shudder, and I like watched it late. I watched the first half late one night, and I wasn't really into it. And I don't think it's on Shudder anymore, because you never know when the hell these things pop up and on.
I think it might be on Amazon Prime. At least it was when I watched it, but that was a while ago.
Yeah, I might have to come back to this one.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's not your standard horror movie pacing. Don't expect a kill every minute. There's literally
it's on Shudder still, so I will watch it again.
Yeah, it's not a kill every minute, but it's definitely horror, and it's definitely kind of, quirky and offbeat.
Okay. Another anthology that I've never seen that I've heard a lot of great things about is Torture Garden.
I've never seen this.
Yeah. I know in the UK, it might be Arrow, one of these companies, but I know there's a very fancy special edition Blu-ray coming out in the UK. Here in the US, there's actually, the cover's terrible, so you should flip the inside out, but there's a Blu-ray, triple feature. It's called Psycho Circus Triple Feature. And it's got Brotherhood of Satan, Torture Garden, Creeping Flesh. It's 3 movies for under $10.
And all 3 of those have their own charm. Even Brotherhood of Satan.
Yeah, that's the better cover. I switched it to this cover, which is...
Can you spin that this way?
Yeah, this is how it comes like that, which you're like, what the hell is that thing? The Psycho Circus, 3 Rings of Terror. But then the reverse is just kind of like the posters all next to each other. And so I thought that was a much better image. Yeah. But I've heard a lot about Torture Garden. I've never seen it, so that is on my queue. And literally it's under $10 for this triple feature, so it seems worth it.
Very cool.
Okay, you're right in the middle of your entire month of viewing, and you're getting a little exhausted, and that's the perfect time to watch Kathy's Curse. This is the exact moment in your life.
I don't know if people are going to agree with you,
where you need to watch Kathy's Curse this moment, and that's all you need to know.
Well, then you get to follow that up with something which is actually good and fun, and that will be Drag Me to Hell.
There you go.
I'd agree with that.
Yes. So number 18, Drag Me to Hell.
Okay, let's see. My next anthology. Wow, I didn't realize the Blu-ray was so far out of print, but it is a movie called The Monster Club. And this one's kind of fun because it's got Vincent Price, it's got Donald Pleasance, it's got John Carradine. It's also got Becca. You'd probably recognize it. There's one, because they're basically all at a nightclub, and so the stories kind of spin from there. And Vincent Price is kind of the wraparound host, for lack of a better term. But then there's this one awesome little animated bit, and I'm sure there's been like Halloween gifs of it, where basically like a screen drops down and it's like an animated dancer pulling her skin off, and then she's just bones.
Oh yeah.
That is from this movie, The Monster Club, and so that's going to be on my queue this year. There was, I think, this was who put this out? Kino or Olive? It was probably, Olive Films. No, Scorpion Entertainment put this out on Blu-ray, but it seems like it is unavailable at the moment. So find a friend that's got The Monster Club, I guess.
Yeah.
Coming back, I was reminded by Josh Ethier beating up whoever he beat up, Adam Egypt Mortimer at Fantastic Fest. I was just literally all I saw was the reports from Fantastic Fest, and all it made me go is, I feel like rewatching Christine. So that's all I got out of them fighting. So he was fighting for how Christine's the best King adaptation, which is clearly wrong.
And Josh Ethier won.
I think they kind of tied. I can't remember if no, maybe he won.
Carpenter wouldn't agree with him.
Yeah, exactly. But it really made me really want to rewatch the Blu-ray, because I've actually never seen it on Blu-ray. So
ooh, yeah. And it is a beautiful movie.
And I always thought it was one of his best. Like, just like the craft of the film is excellent. That was the one thing I always remember about it. So I'm looking forward to seeing Christine again.
Nice.
Cool.
So my next one, this is the one that is the least, I'll say, fun and light of the bunch, but it's a really good film. And I'm thinking that a number of shockers haven't seen it yet, but should. The Seventh Victim from 1943. Yeah. And I know Elric's a big fan of this one as well. And it's
it's going to be on. Okay, so this can actually help people because it is hard to get. It's going to be on TCM's month. So they're playing all these films. There's a 2-day block where it's all of Ludden's films in a row, including the documentary by that Scorsese was part of On Him. And it's towards the end. I think maybe it's towards the middle of the month, but you can see the whole TCM schedule. A lot of good classic stuff, to be honest, in there this year. And the prints of those tend to be, because it's TCM, tend to be better transfers than they tend to look better than the DVDs, in my opinion. But even though it's coming from the same source, but maybe it's just psychological. When it's on TV, I'm always like, ooh, that looks good.
That's
pretty fun. Where are we? That was yours?
Rob.
Okay. My next one will be Tales from the Dark Side, the movie.
Oh, that was on my list as well.
Yeah, one of my all-time favorites. I've talked about it a lot. It's just... I love it's one of my, I think it's my favorite like wraparound. And it was one of my favorite theatrical going experiences. Cause again, I snuck in with a couple of friends and this guy was bringing his kids in and we snuck in with him and he just turned to us after every segment and just like shook his hand and went twist. Yeah. And then so I'll always remember that. I was like, that was the movie that just felt like a roller coaster to me. And you look at it now and it's like Julianne Moore and Christian Slater and Steve Buscemi and James Remar and, like just so many great, Buster Poindexter, aka, what's his name? What's his real name?
David Johansen.
David Johansen. Just so many great people. Like an all-star cast, great. And I consider it's Creepshow 3. I mean,
and that last story just got so much heart.
So good. Love it. Tales from the Dark Side of the Movie. Sorry to take one from you, Becca.
I hope you have
I've got
others.
One. Right,
that was on your actual list. I didn't catch it.
I made a list of 12 just in case we doubled up.
I always want at least one that I haven't seen, and this has been on my list to see for a while now, which is The Night Evelyn Came Out of Her Grave. Ooh. It's always been on my list, and people have told me it's a little slow.
I just made a face.
Yeah, she made a face that told me it's slow.
It's a little slow.
But that's out on that
soundtrack, though.
The Arrow box set. What was that one called?
Because it comes with the Red Queen,
which I did watch that
kills,
one on it.
Yeah, 7 times,
which was fun
too. Yeah, because I think it's the same director.
And so I've just never seen it, and I always want to make an excuse to see something I haven't seen. So that will be
that's great.
Great title.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So number 24, I am going to go with. Let's go Beyond the Gates.
Hey, all right, Jackson Stewart.
Again, trying to do some fun ones here. I thought that was just a really fun, and I wanted to throw some contemporary stuff in because I was worried that all of ours were going to be like, 80s classics or things like that.
Pretty much.
Beyond the Gates.
Alrighty, my next one. This is one we've talked about quite a lot. It's one that's thankfully now being rediscovered in a huge way, and I think it's more relevant than ever. And that is Darren Scott produced this, Tales from the Hood.
Yeah.
Nice.
Basically the last few days are like all of my favorite anthologies, and that's up there. It's probably my top 5 of anthologies. Just revisiting that Blu-ray that Scream Factory put out, I was just like, man, this is so great. And I think I'd watched the Blu-ray not too long after seeing Get Out in theaters. And so it's just like, man, it's more relevant than ever. Yeah. So Tales from the Hood is my my second to last.
And it gets our Wingshauser seal of approval.
Yeah, of course.
Which will always get Wings. Here's I enjoy this. It's always fun to put on like a Corman Poe adaptation. I always think every year. So I'm going for one that I haven't seen as much. I've seen all of them at some point in my life, and that is Tomb of Ligeia. And
that's my favorite.
Oh, really? I remember it being super atmospheric, less scary, but more like it's Vincent Price with Dead Wives, right?
It's a lot of cat imagery too, which makes it work. The colors are really vivid in it, and it's Vincent Price, so he's always like super sensitive to like, sights and sounds and smells and things like that. So yeah, he freaks out a lot. But yeah, I always really
What more endorsement do you want?
I really like Ligeia.
And let's watch some Corman while we still have him. Yeah. I mean, he's outliving everyone. So
yes.
let's not take it for granted.
Yeah.
For number 27, I put in Race with the Devil. Yeah. Just because I really wanted a fun car flick, and I always loved this film. So Race with the Devil.
The best.
Alrighty, and my last pick is John Carpenter's Body Bags. Like I said, I discovered this only a couple years ago, and I was so happy to discover it because it's just such a gem of a movie. The late great Toby Hooper directed the 3rd segment. Yet again, all-star cast, but not only that, it's just so much fun to see Wes Craven pop up and Sam Raimi and just like Robert Carradine and like all these great familiar faces within the horror world. And
they're all good. I think I sometimes change which ones I think are really, really great, but actually when you step back, all the stories are good.
Oh yeah. No,
like
they're all great.
Strong.
Yeah. And they're all, I mean,
and Hooper's is really strong. I mean, that's a dark fucking
It's really dark.
story.
Mark Hamill's in it. He's great.
He's great.
The Hooper one. And I think you're right. I think the one with,
Keach.
With Stacy Keach is probably one of the funniest things that Carpenter's ever done.
Yeah. It's just pure genius.
So yeah, body bags for me.
That's a good one. My last one is very thematically linked to yours, and I am putting it in such a prime position because I think it is now a modern day classic, and I think it should be broken out every Halloween, and that's Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Yes.
Of all the films I've seen the last couple of years, that is still the most fun and the most spooky and the most like what I think of as the feeling I want from Halloween. That's the movie that delivered it in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think if anyone still hasn't gone on this train, check it out. Perfect to watch right up next to Halloween.
And for my right before Halloween, I wanted to do something scary right before Halloween. So I went with The Last Shift, because that one was one of the few films within the past few years that I could like genuinely walk away and say, okay, that was scary. Like Autopsy of Jane Doe had the same effect on me, but both that and The Last Shift.
Yeah, there's some good spooky stuff there.
Excellent. So that is and obviously the last day is up to you.
Yeah.
That is your dealer's choice of Trick or Treat, Halloween, or Halloween 3.
We had Rob with the theme of his anthologies. We had Becca with the theme of fun. So what was Elric's? Let me just quickly remind you. Let's see if you can pick it. Alice Sweethouse,
female protagonist.
May, Jessica, Solange, Julia, Kathy, Christine, Evelyn, Lygia, and Jane Doe.
Way
Boom.
to go,
and no one picked it while we were doing it, which surprised me. But anyway.
Way to go, man. That's kind of
fun.
Yeah, that is.
That's why they were so random. Sorry about that. I was literally just picking on names.
That's totally fine. And we had some time before our guest comes. So did anyone see anything new and exciting that they'd like to discuss now?
I'm going to briefly discuss something that is, it's not hard, but I will say that because we have discussed things like The Keepers and, what's the other one?
She's going to talk about a graffiti documentary.
I am. No, seriously,
you're so
guys.
predictable.
Is it really? Oh my God.
Watch American Vandal, guys. It is so fucking good.
I've heard people talk about it.
It is so goddamn good.
I saw the trailer and people thought it was real. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
No, it's seriously, it is not real.
I just had heard it was a documentary.
Oh, God, no. It's like a mockumentary. It's like, it's made by the Funny or Die people, which really don't let that discourage you in any way. It is literally, it starts out as a making of a murderer style setup where it's about a school where someone spray paints 27 dicks on the faculty's cars.
Yes.
And then they blame this one kid, but this other high school student becomes convinced that this kid didn't do it and wants to make a documentary proving that he did not do it. And at first I was like, how do they continue this for 8 episodes? And it goes down rabbit holes, and it is the most riveting thing I have seen in forever. Like BJ and I are totally into this. So yeah,
if you're gonna
Vandal.
If you're gonna go that way, then I'm gonna say that the trailer that they released to The Punisher, which can be horror if you want to consider John Bernthal slaughtering lots of criminals.
I'll say it's cringy.
Have you seen the trailer yet?
No, not yet.
It's edited to Metallica's One.
Yeah.
And I mean, it escalates the way One does. Yeah. As in, it starts with kind of like the guitar soft, and then there has never been a more perfect song. If you think about the lyrics to that song, and then think of The Punisher. I mean, the thing that's been fun is they've been mysterious. They keep blurring the date out and they won't tell you. They just keep saying it's sooner than you think. I have a sneaky suspicion that they're going to drop it on Friday, October 13th. That is my guess. Wow. But I have no idea for sure. I have no idea why they're being so coy about it. But it's coming any day now. Anyway, Elric, what'd you see?
A couple things. One, shout out to the editor of the Mother trailer for calling me out. He wrote to a friend and said, I take umbrage with the fact that you said that it was marketed in a way that was misleading.
I love that.
And I respect that. And I do respect you for saying that, because actually it wasn't the trailer I was discussing, because I had only seen that first trailer, which I thought it was a great trailer and didn't show much. I never actually watched the full long trailer because I closed my eyes when it would come on. I was really pretty much taking a hit at the poster that's designed to be exactly like the Rosemary Baby design and a lot of the imagery that kind of gets it. But anyway, I respect him because he's a longtime listener and actually fan of the show. And he wrote me an email, and I'm going to be responding to your email, so don't worry. I just thought you deserved a shout out because you actually cut a brilliant trailer for it. It's not the trailer, so don't worry about that. But
clear, Elric. Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that. A couple shows. Look, one of the guests who is going to be on here in a sec, I want to just bring up the pilot of the new series of No End House from Channel Zero's No End House, because I absolutely, like, it literally is all my sweet spots in a 1 hour format. I was like, holy shit, it's like kind of got the It Follows feel aesthetically. It has really personal. I don't want to say I teared up, but it kind of got to me emotionally. The story of a deceased father who's played by the brilliant John Carroll Lynch, and he's only in flashbacks, and it's just, I don't know, I found it super effective. And then it becomes this kind of fun, trashy teen, like going into a haunt, which reminded me of Tension experience last year. So suddenly I had all these things,
but the haunt is
coming together.
So cool.
Yeah, but that's what Tension was like. It's super artistic and minimal and surprising. Anyway, I love this pilot as much as I love the first season, and so I am very excited. Like, and I'm not saying that because the guy's coming on. This is always cool when these things kind of align. And then the other thing, I watched the entire season of Handmaid's Tale. I hadn't seen yet, and you know what, man?
Did you binge watch that?
We did in a weekend, but I got to say, I've never seen any show in my life that was so perfectly aligned with the problems of the day, even though it's basically sci-fi kind of dystopian. It's so crazy watching it when at the same time I'm looking at Twitter and all the crazy misogyny going on in film culture right now, which is just, really disheartening with a lot of places we love. Then Trump's ridiculousness, and then just looking at the world and going, oh, look how easy it would be, basically the fall of women's rights, and just to like yank them away. Like literally, it's just the opening without spoilers is at one point they're like, hey, our bank accounts have been frozen. That's weird. Then suddenly now we're like have no rights, and we all get fired one day from work. And then suddenly it turns into a police state where, men are dominant and women are there for breeding. And this show is so feels so fucked up and like it exists in a different time, but then it'll have flashbacks that are set like now, and you're like, whoa, this is crazy. Wow. And it is right fucking now. And so it makes sense. It's rare that a show's really popular and the zeitgeist and it's good, but that's this show. Like, I was really shocked how good it was.
And this is a Hulu original.
Original, but you can I bought it like the whole season to watch for like $17 on Amazon, so I don't even have Hulu, and it meant I could watch the whole thing without worrying.
Wow. Okay.
It really, I think if you're interested in challenging and artistic, it's like beautifully done too. But man, it was it probably wouldn't necessarily recommend binging, but it's
a little heavy to binge.
Yeah, but it's just like there's something going on, man. Like out there in the world, and it's not for a show like this necessarily to just harp on about, but it feels, and I always look on the positive where I think, well, because it's all out there, maybe that means change is coming, but it could also easily switch the other way, and people have to be on guard, that your civil liberties aren't stripped. And this show's a great warning of that, I thought. Good stuff. You've seen it, right?
Yes,
yeah.
I
remember you mentioning a while back.
Yeah, I had discussed it a while back that it was definitely one of the highlights of my television year by
this
far.
Year's great.
And I had read the book and wasn't expecting it to kind of go in some of the directions that it did.
And I really dislike the other old movie about it, Howard Pinter wrote it, and it's just one of those movies that's like trying really hard to be political. It just
it was also it felt made for TV movie. I remember thinking that even at the time. It may have actually been a
this has found a way
movie
to contemporize this idea and do it in a way that works. That's what really is.
But I saw I had watched Get Out and then seen Handmaid's Tale pretty close back to back, because I remember I was at this point where I was like, man, I love that media is getting so informed in this. And then it kind of, we haven't had anything like really pushy since then. So I want more like socially conscious stuff. So the one that I watched this week, well, I watched a couple, but The Nameless from 1999. Have you guys seen this?
I remember the cover.
Yeah, it's based on a Ramsey Campbell novel. And it is a Spanish film, but it's in English. And so, or at least I can't remember. I'm 99% sure it was in English. I may have been reading subtitles. But anyway, it's about a husband and wife whose child goes missing when she's really, really young. And then they think that she's just been abducted and that she's probably dead, and they kind of recover from it, which is really hard to watch, but it's a short part of the movie. And then years later, they get a call from this woman claiming to be their daughter and claiming that she's being held by a cult and that she can't escape. And so they launch this hunt. The police don't really believe them that much, but an investigator kind of comes along with them, and they launch this hunt into a cult to try to find out if this woman is their daughter. And it gets downright terrifying. Like Chris Alexander had recommended this one to me years ago when I was working at Fangoria, because he knew I liked mysteries so much. And yeah, this kind of, it had some clunky moments, but it really did kind of hit my sweet spot of like mystery, where I was fully engaged the whole time going, I have to find out what's going on and what kind of the twist is. And there is an interesting twist at the end. I think it was streaming somewhere. So yeah, 1999's The Nameless.
Yeah, this is one of the rec guys.
Yeah.
One of the guys that did
Bulgara.
Yeah. Really quickly, I'm not going to delve too hard into it, but I've been just I don't want to say obsessed. That's not the right word, but I've been going through my movie collection and spotting several movies that have quote unquote director's cuts on them. And so I'm like, you know what? Oh, I never saw the longer director's cut of this film. And so there are two I watched this week, and I'm just going to talk about them very briefly. But the first, because it kind of fits in the genre, but it's more sci-fi than anything, which is Alex Proyas's Dark City. Yeah. One of my all-time favorite movies. I remember
so much
when this came out. I saw it like 3 or 4 times. I was just so blown away.
That was one of the first times where I didn't understand. I remember going to it, going, "Wow, that's the best thing ever," and then reading a critic like bashing it and not understanding how a critic could have a different opinion of what was obvious. Like it was obviously a great movie.
Well, the first time you watch it, it's a little hard to figure out what's going on, and then once it resolves itself, you're like, "Oh, that's great." What it was. The director's cut is this is one of the rare cases where it's better than the original.
That is right.
Wow.
They actually remove all of Kiefer. I guess in the theatrical, Kiefer Sutherland has a voiceover. None of that is in the director's cut. I guess they maybe thought the audiences wouldn't be able to pick up on it. But if you've already seen the movie, when you watch the director's cut, you'll be fully aware of what's going on. There's a few little bits added in that are actually really cool, that actually help enhance some of the characters. And more importantly, and this is only because I read about it online after, they kind of completed or improved on the effects.
Yeah, that was the finale in the original theatrical. That was the only negative, is that the kind of final piece is a little on the CG.
No, I remember the director's cut looked pretty badass.
Yeah.
So that one was terrific. I loved it.
But Rob, let me make a slight validation for Kiefer Sutherland.
I love that character choice. It is the weirdest thing ever.
Igor.
But he's so great in it.
I remember that one. I had just discovered Rocky Horror Picture Show like a year before it. I was so excited because I saw Richard O'Brien, who was
Richard O'Brien's
Riff
great
and
in it.
he's in that.
Hand.
And he's phenomenal.
Mr. Hand, I think Mr. Hand, something like that. He's got a great character name in Dark City. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah. I just
really
watched
cool.
it. I think it is Mr. Hand.
It's something like that.
But anyway, so Dark City, I recommend the director's cut, and that's on the Blu-ray. And the other one that I watched, which is actually the complete opposite, The Frighteners, which I love. Great movie, but the director's cut is a good 12, 13 minutes longer. Yeah. And it actually who would have thought? I mean, back then, this isn't the Peter Jackson that we knew that is used to making bloated versions of movies. Yeah, it's just, it throws the pacing off. Right. There's some interesting new things in there, but it felt like an eternity. And that's a really fun movie. Yeah. And I really love it a lot. And so in that case, it was cool to see the director's cut, but I much rather prefer the original theatrical, which is much tighter, a lot more fun. Michael J. Fox is great in it. And it's got like kind of almost a Ghostbusters vibe to it. That's how I always envision it, is like it kind of felt like that.
That's a good Halloween season movie.
And that's the other reason, is it just feels so perfect for right about now, you know? So
unless it's 12 minutes of Jeff Combs, I don't care.
No, and I mean he's so good.
That is just ridiculous. Right. I might even enjoy it more than Reanimator in terms of performance.
His character is pretty out of control.
He gets to chew all the scenery.
I mean, the first scene he pops up in, and then the girl yells at him and he goes and vomits because he can't handle a girl yelling at him. It's just like some of his character choices are pretty spectacular. His body is a temple of pain. So yes, exactly. So that's all I got. And we've got some fantastic guests on in the wings. So stand by. We got one more sponsor for you, and we'll be right back.
Are you hiring? Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? With ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to 100+ job sites with just one click. Then their powerful technology efficiently matches the right people to your job, better than anyone else. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the candidates finding you. It finds them. In fact, 80% of employers who post their job on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate within 1 day. No juggling emails or calls to your office. Simply screen, rate, and manage candidates all in one place with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use dashboard. Find out why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, our listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/shock. One more time, that's ZipRecruiter.com/shock. Try it for free, ZipRecruiter.com/shock.
Okay, and welcome back to the show. We're pretty excited because we've got two very, very special guests on the show tonight. And one of them you have heard from before. Back when we were doing the first season of Channel Zero was on Candle Cove. We had the show creator and writer Nick Antosca. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And now we're back because there's a new season of it, which Elric was talking about before we went on break.
And a good reminder to go back and watch the original series this Halloween, because it's a perfect Halloween theme feel, I think.
It really is. It's got that dreamlike Halloween quality to it. But we have another guest.
But also with us, somebody that we've been very excited about, who we've wanted to have on the show since the very beginning. And I don't know, just timing, whatever the case is, but the timing is right now. Welcome, Don Mancini.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And we're very excited because obviously there's a new Chucky movie coming out. You're involved with this show. You were involved with Hannibal. So a lot of fun stuff to talk about.
He's rumored to have directed the new Cult of Chucky.
Rumored to have directed.
I looked it up on IMDb.
Yes. The rumor is dispelled here.
Here's the scoop. Don Mancini did direct the new film, despite what IMDb says. But basically, let's go to this new season. Nick, I think you started teasing us when you were on last time. Were you already in the thick of this show when the first one was airing?
We were. We shoot them back to back. So we had already shot No End House, I think, when I came in last time.
Interesting.
We were probably just getting into post. And in fact, we were doing that while Candle Cove was airing. So it was kind of like, oh wow, we managed to do one. Now let's survive another one. And I remember you guys were digging for some details.
Yeah.
I had to kind of play it cool.
Where was No End House shot? If you were kind of doing it while you were on air, is it shot here in LA?
No, we shoot in Winnipeg.
Okay.
In Manitoba. So we shot Candle Cove summer of last year. Then we shot No End House in the fall. And then we do post in LA. So I was flying back and forth, doing post remotely, but also flying back for mixes and stuff while we were shooting.
So you have no time between the two shows to kind of respond to things of the first series, or how people reacted, or you just had to go trust your instincts and
not at all. Not at all. I mean, the plan was always to do every season very differently. Yeah. So it's you learn things production wise, shit, our budget is tiny. We can't do X or we can't do Y, or it's better to do this practically. But in terms of audience response, we had no feedback at all going into No End House. So it was, everything that you see in No End House aesthetically was always the intention. It was just you got to go with your gut.
Which is one of the great things about it so far. I mean, my first reactions, as I was just saying, he kind of has a little bit of vibe of It Follows because of the kind of characters and some of the following shots. But then once you get into the place, they were saying I did last year, they called the tension experience. And it kind of reminded me of that, this kind of a game that you buy into and you're going to have an experience in the house. It's not a typical traditional haunted house. It's a lot more artistic and stranger, and therefore probably scarier because it feels more tailored.
Personal.
Yeah, it's tailored to the person. And I thought that was super effective and kind of just emotionally compelling, which I wasn't necessarily expecting from the teasers of it. I thought it was going to be kind of a teen thing, but it is, but with a real emotional hook.
Yeah, cool. I mean, the first two, the Candle Cove, No End House, they're pretty different in many ways. Drastic. But one thing that's consistent is it's psychological horror.
Yeah,
we are always trying to creep you out and stay under your skin rather than make you jump and then laugh and then go play with your dog or something. I always prefer horror that makes you uncomfortable later.
I love the setup for No End House, how it's much more like an art installation that you have to catch, where it's like this mysterious artist.
A pop-up.
Yeah, that pops up and it's curated by you. And I loved that kind of approach with it. Did you actually make the like big gray house? Does it actually exist somewhere?
Yes and no. We made about half of it. And because we had to move it all over the place and shoot in different locations with it, part of it is CG, but there's about half a house built. Okay. The actors can get on top of it. They can interact with it. They can do stuff. We in the original story that it's based on, it's like a Halloween Horror Nights type thing. You know, it's a very different kind of haunted house. And we wanted to incorporate like the Sleep No More kind of thing. Yeah. This idea of it's an art project, and the real raw material for the art project is like your worst fears, your vulnerabilities, the deep stuff it digs out of your head.
Right. And was that, so for those who didn't hear that previous episode, you kind of take inspiration from creepypastas and original stories. What's patient zero for this particular thread?
So No End House is based on a story by Brian Russell. It's one of the best known creepypasta stories.
You can read it on the Blumhouse website.
Yes. The story is, the concept is basically the same, right? Like, you go into this house, each room is scarier than the last. You leave the house and you think you're out, and then you start to realize like something's not right. I go home and like something's off, and you begin to suspect that you are still somehow in the last room of the house. And that's basically the short story. Right. So we like with Candle Cove, we get through that basically in the first episode. And then Brian's story is the foundation for a lot of really eerie stuff that we invented. And, our writer's room, it's Don and me and Harley, who was on last time.
Yeah.
Erica Sala, Katie Gruhl, Angel Varric Iglar. It's a really great group, and it's been a good model for us, like using these stories that have a strong foundation and then letting a bunch of talented writers invent stuff.
Well, let's talk about putting that writer's room together and how you and Don initially ended up working together. Because you both were on Hannibal as well. And Don, was TVOs a medium you were like looking to get into? Obviously I know you from your films, but especially nowadays where it seems like we could tell these unique horror stories in this medium. I'm just curious if you had a history with TV or is this fairly new?
It's fairly new for me, other than 100 years ago, I did an episode of Tales from the Crypt for HBO.
Oh, wow. Which one?
Fitting Punishment, directed by Jack Shoulder.
Oh, Jack Shoulder.
Okay.
Cool.
It was fun. But other than that was my only experience in television until Hannibal. And it really was just because I was a massive Hannibal fan. Not just of the show, but the whole franchise. Yeah. So when the show started, I was, sort of dubious. What are they going to do with this? And of course, immediately it was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. And a friend, because I guess it was we shot it in Toronto. A friend of mine in Toronto worked on the show. And so I was just in the habit of like weekly talking to him about the show for a couple of years. And he goes, you should be writing on the show. And I said, oh, get out of here. What are you talking about? And he said, you should talk to Brian. I had never met Brian Fuller before. So basically I was like, this just feels like really pushy. But at my friend's encouragement, Michael Kessler, by the way, I should give him a shout out. I basically wrote Brian a fan letter and told him how much I love the show and the whole franchise. And I said, look, Hannibal is kind of like my Lord of the Rings. There's just like my knowledge of that world is in most situations a little embarrassing, right? But could maybe be of use to you, Brian Fuller. And I didn't really expect anything to happen with that. And he wrote me back and he said, oh, I love Chucky. Let's meet. And we'll talk about it. And I said, okay, great. He goes, I'm going to Europe for a couple of weeks, but I'll call you. And I didn't hear from him. It's just one of those things that's not going to work out. And then we ended up meeting at the Saturn Awards. When he was there for Hannibal, I was there for Curse of Chucky. And we were up for an award. And Martha De Laurentiis was there as well, whom I've known for like 30 years. So I said hello to her, and I'm just like, thank God, I hope I win. If I win, because it's like, I feel like, because if I win the award, then I feel like my chances of getting the Hannibal gig are going to be better.
Right.
And we did win, fortunately, and I did get the gig, and it was great. But Nick and I had actually known each other prior to that, because we knew each other through our mutual friend Fiona Dourif.
Oh.
Because I worked with Nika, who plays Nika in Curse and Cult, and is, of course, in real life, the daughter of Brad. So I had met and worked with Fiona, and then through Fiona met Nick. And then when I ended up on Hannibal, it was just coincidence that it was on it. And I was just like, had no experience in a writer's room at all. So I, like, literally the night before, I remember like pacing in my backyard, and so how does it work? What do you do? What the fuck do I do?
And Brian Fuller came into the writer's room one day and said, "You know Don Mancini?" I said, "Yeah, what's up?" And he said, "Huh." And then Don shows up. Don calls me and is like, "So I'm coming to work with you. What do I need to know? What do I need to know?"
Right.
And
it was great. It was so great having a familiar, friendly face.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was. It was an amazing experience. It's a great first experience in television, and Channel Zero has been a great second experience.
And I'm sure, I imagine that you and Brian just got along like a house on fire, because the thing I love about the both of you is you're both so obsessive about movies that almost every day there will be a screenshot of something, like from both of you. Like him right now, he's been obsessed with Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the 70s one, for like a month.
Yeah,
which
before that
I love.
It was Psycho for the summer.
For a while. It was Psycho for the summer. But you're also the same way. There was one point where I remember you were posting, I think, title sequences and stuff. And
title cards.
Yeah, so I love that you guys like get obsessive about this and just post it nonstop on Facebook. I respond. I mean, we all love that kind of stuff.
What's the best title card?
Oof.
For Chucky?
Anything. Like, since you're a connoisseur,
I have the answer.
What are some of the good ones?
The best title card is Channel Zero No End House. Episode 1. Did you think that was an amazing title card when she dives into the water?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm not taking credit for this.
Yeah, no, that was beautiful.
It's Nick's. It's beautiful. And actually, there's something that I guess it's you or Craig and Stephen Pyatt.
Yeah, I mean that's a title card that was designed by our title card artists that we hire.
But it's also your deployment of it. And where you put the cards is always very thoughtful and artful.
Yeah,
I approve.
mean, it sort of goes to the what do you expect this show to be, right? Like before you've ever seen Candle Cove or anything, it's like, okay, it's on Sci-Fi and it's about puppets and it's based on something called creepypasta. It's probably going to be like really campy and silly. So like, let's do the opposite of that in all respects. And that with Candle Cove and Craig's direction, very restrained, like elegant. And so we wanted a title card that would be that style.
Mm-hmm. But also the way you do, because I remember talking to you about this, because what's the title sequence going to be like? And you're like, well, we're not really going to have a title sequence per se. I'm like, what? You can't do that.
To you, that's heresy.
But no, you convinced me, because I think the way you treat it is every episode's like its own movie. I mean, in each title sequence, I mean, it feels designed.
Right. Well, we wanted it to be cinematic. I mean, that's the watchword for a lot of the design elements of the show. You want it to be cinematic. Our budget is very low, but a beautiful title card doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
Right. Like
and it sets the tone or the mood or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had worked together on an adaptation of The Fury a couple of years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I just had to get that in because I knew that these people would appreciate it. We never even
for
went
TV.
Yeah, as a series.
Oh my God.
It was the most exciting.
Sense, yeah.
It was so exciting.
And then I just have to say I had a really bizarre, cool experience recently where I was being interviewed about Channel Zero, and there was like a series of interviewers on this conference call, and they say, okay, the next interviewer's name is so-and-so from such and such. And I said, wait a second. Did you say your name is John Ferris? And the guy goes, yep. And I was like, that's funny. You know, that's the same name as the author of the novel, The Fury, which is basically, I said, that's my dad. And we got in touch with him like afterward, and he sent you a book.
John Ferris Sr. sent, I'm such a Fury fanatic that my cats are named Robin and Gillian.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's pretty great.
It's intense. And so and Nick knew of my admiration for the Fury book and movie, and very kindly, in my view, invited me to work with work with Nick on that.
Kindly, I was like, I would be insane not to call God. Nobody knows more about this book.
It's like the Hannibal. I'm such a Fury geek. But anyway, but I remember we were talking about title sequences because I said we have to use the John Williams theme, and Nick's like, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is like one of the greatest horror scores ever.
Yes. I remember when I posted about the score, you were very excited about that. Gave me a big thumbs up. Cause it is terrific. I'm curious, Don, do you, going into this show, did you know much about the creepypastas and like that sort of thing? Cause
I did not.
Yeah. Did you investigate that, or did you just decide to go with what the story was? And this is almost like kind of saying, like, when you jump into a franchise, like, do you watch the rest of them, or do you try to approach it fresh?
More the latter for me. I don't know what the other writers were like, but I of course read the stories that the seasons were based on, but you know, that takes 2 minutes, whatever. So that it was fairly fundamental, but no, I was not familiar. I think I'm, betraying my age here, because I think it is partly generational. That's just like, oh, what are the kids into today? Creepypasta? Yeah. That sounds stupid. In fact, it's not. But no, it's just, Nick had a very specific vision of what he wanted these shows to be. And it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. With how specific your ideas initially, you've got these great writers in the writer's room. So how collaborative or how open are you to what people bring to the table? Like, is there an idea? Is there a line in terms of how crazy you guys can go with the show?
Well, no, there's no line. But it's a super, super collaborative show. I have an idea of where I want to go when we get into the writer's room. Like, I write the first episode of every season, and I know thematically and in terms of like the emotional arcs of the characters where I want to go by the end. But the point of having writers like Don and Harley in the writer's room is like, we can go nuts. We start with, the premise of the story, and our version of the main character and what they're dealing with, what their trauma is going to be, what their journey is going to be. And then the writers and I kind of as a group create, flesh out all the details. We spend, 20 weeks doing that. And then the directors have a much bigger hand in it creatively than TV directors normally do. Craig McNeil in the first season. On No End House, Stephen Pyatt did an amazing job. And because of the way these were written back, they were written in the same writer's room. And then we started prep, and then we went straight into prep on the second season when we had just finished shooting the first season. That meant that the scripts weren't even all entirely finished, when they should have been. That's not atypical for TV, but it meant that we were still creating stuff and rewriting and inventing. And I tend to rewrite until the camera rolls, which is, for better or worse, an inherited trait from Brian Fuller, really. So the director is very involved in that. And Stephen and I and Eric Crary, his producing partner, would be, we were figuring out the last episode, the beats of the last episode of the season, along with Angel, who co-wrote it with me, right before we went to camera.
Wow.
So who on the staff has anaphylaxis? Because that was the most serious. I have it, and it was the most accurate screen portrayal I've ever seen of it. Like, I had to leave the room at one point.
Well, so I don't think anybody on the staff does, but my dad always had severe allergies.
Okay,
and so he carried around an EpiPen.
I got 2 of them in my bag.
Yeah. It's insect stings, that kind of thing. And
Mine's
it was like super dangerous.
Most foods, actually, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like the world becomes a weapon, it's full of weapons against you.
The one line about being suffocated by your own face. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, someone's experienced this, because no one would write that unless they'd like seen it in action. So impressive.
I think that's your episode. That's episode 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
I wish I could take credit for that idea, but I mean, it's been so long. I don't know what I can take credit for. I don't remember. I do know that detail evolved, because I remember in the early days of No End House, the way that character died was very, very different. It was not an allergic reaction.
Wow.
Yeah. And this kind of speaks to something interesting about TV writers' rooms that the vast majority of people who watch TV don't understand, which is sometimes people will say, well, who thought of that? Who thought of that cool thing? And you truly, at a certain point, you're like, I don't know. I don't remember. I remember when I first got out to LA and I was like meeting some writers who I hoped could like give me advice. And I met this guy, George Mastras, who had worked on Breaking Bad. And I said, who came up with the guy who rings the bell, like the old Uncle Tio, whatever. And he said, I have no idea. The writer's room did. And I thought he was like being coy or something. But now I realize that TV is such a collaborative writer's medium. I truly can't remember who came up with like all these cool little details or who wrote this speech or that speech. And
that was me.
Yeah.
When you spend 8 hours a day spitballing ideas and throwing things off of each other, I'm sure that it's a lot of just amalgam and evolution of ideas throughout.
Yeah. And if TV script credits were honest, then most scripts would have most of the writers on the staff's names on them. Yeah. You can have a WGA maximum of 3 names on a script, I believe, or 3 writing entities. But there, in a writer's room, you say like, okay, this scene needs to be reworked in order to accommodate this change in the plot. Can you go off and rewrite it? And then as the showrunner, you sort of, curate that. But everybody's writing, everybody's working and contributing to everything.
One of the cool things about the show, and correct me if I'm wrong, is both the first season and now the second season, all episodes are directed by one director. Right. So that's kind of interesting, because in a broad sense, it feels like you guys are writing a 6-hour movie for one specific director.
Exactly.
And so how much does the director get involved in the writer's room because you already had Steven when we last spoke to you.
Yeah, but that we had already finished shooting then.
God. Okay.
So yeah. The directors aren't too involved in the actual writer's room, only because the process of hiring a director takes long enough that by the time we've hired them, the writer's room is usually pretty close to wrapping up. Wow. But that doesn't mean all the writing is done, because like I said, there's a lot of polishing and evolving, and ideas kind of come up, and ideas get inspired by, like, you hire an actor and then it's like, oh, this guy can do more than is written on the page.
Mm-hmm. I like the confidence you show in the choices of director. You in both cases, you chose somebody who I think their visual style then is quite different in the show, and quite evolved in a sense, because I did watch After You're Here last. I sought out Uncle John, and I really liked it, but it's such a grounded realist piece. And then the first episode of this is super stylized to an extent. I mean, still real emotionally, but very visually engaging and beautiful. So it's fun to see that you put trust in someone who can emotionally deliver, but let them have a slightly bigger canvas, maybe.
Yeah. Well, what I saw in Uncle John is mastery of tone. Yeah. Right. And understanding of character psychology. Right. Stephen Pyatt, obviously, even with a super low budget, was able to have demonstrate a total command of tone and suspense. It's not a horror movie at all. Yeah. It's not even like Craig's film, The Boy, is arguably a horror movie. Mm-hmm. Stephen's film is not a horror movie. But it shows he's got a command of the camera. It shows he understands suspense. And, he didn't apply for the job. I tracked him down. Yeah. And he was, he read the script, and then his take on it was just really smart and really character based. And he was very ambitious stylistically. You could see that, he had made his first film using a lot of handheld and stuff because he had to, because he used the extremely limited resources he had. And we don't have a huge budget. We have a small budget for TV, but it's better than an ultra micro budget indie movie. And with more resources, he's going to take more stylistic risks. You got a Steadicam, you got a crane, you're going to use it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and speaking of directing, how did things line up for Cult of Chucky? Because from what I understand, a lot of the crew from Channel Zero was involved in that. Because I know you were teasing this shortly after Curse came out that there would be another one, and so bring us up to speed. How did things align to make it happen when it did?
Well, it's kind of a complicated and somewhat boring story, and I'm not even sure to what degree I'm authorized to disclose all of it, honestly. Sure. It's always some version of there's stuff going on at the studio that doesn't involve me, and it's a waiting game, and you wait and you wait and you wait, and then they put a gun to your head and say, "We want the movie for next Halloween, go." And so it was a less benign version of that what I just described. But the Winnipeg of it, I'd done Curse of Chucky there, and then Nick shot his Channel Zero 2 seasons there, and just as soon as that they wrapped, then I went in. And it was somewhat strategic because initially Universal did not want to go back there, not for any reason other than they wanted to start shooting a month earlier because it would have just given us more time in post. They wanted to go to Romania where I had done Seed of Chucky, but I had such a great experience in Winnipeg, and then that was just sort of confirmed, not that I needed it, but just, Nick having done 2 seasons of Channel Zero there. And I, went up a couple of times just to attend a Chucky business and re-meeting the people that I'd worked with before. And it's like, I'm coming back. So, leave your schedule open.
And all the crew there, they haul around their gear and there's a big Chucky sticker on it and then a big Channel Zero sticker.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And we even have the same loft. We swap the same loft back and forth.
It's the nicest apartment in downtown Winnipeg, and so we just traded it.
I want to ask a little bit about, but before we delve into the new movie, the release of Curse, because this was a really cool thing, and I think it's pretty unique in terms of a horror franchise. What was cool about it was it came out and was included as part of a box set. I think it was the first time that all the films were collected together because the first ones at a different studio, etc. And so there was something kind of cool about buying the Child's Play box set. Of course, like every horror fan, you marathon them when you buy them. Mm-hmm. And just the idea of coming home with this box set and then it's like, oh, there's a new movie in here. And so I kind of liked that was the release strategy.
We're doing that again.
Well, yes,
there's another box set.
Yes, the 7-disc box set, which I've been eyeing, but I think I'm just going to buy the solo. I already pre-ordered.
I think I'm going to give that to you.
Oh, really?
Great. I think you've earned that.
He spent his money.
That's so cool. But I really liked it. And I was wondering if that was just coincidence the way that release happened, because I was at FearNet at the time, and I remember when the Curse trailer dropped. That was one of the most highest trafficked things we'd posted at that point.
Yeah, it blew up. I was at Fangoria then, and I remember that day, it blew up the traffic.
It was huge, and everyone's like, when can I see it in theaters? And so to be like, oh, well, it's going to premiere as part of this box set, or you can buy it separately, etc. And so I'm just wondering, was that kind of the plan? Because, it's a cool marketing plan.
It's absolutely the plan. Yeah. Both Curse and Cult were designed for that specific market, even though, because Curse did well, and there were a number of articles and critics that said, why wasn't this movie released in theaters? And when we first got into Curse, I had to get over my initial feeling that I was being demoted to, the minor leagues or something. But then I realized, shake it off. It's it's $5 million. It's not nothing. You just make a good $5 million movie.
Which is still huge for this genre right now.
Especially now.
That's impressive.
Absolutely. It is. Although it with puppets, it doesn't go as far as you think.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
But still, you're right. It's it's a healthy budget for the horror genre these days. Absolutely. So, my mission is just to make the best movie possible. And I go around and see it in theaters and film festivals. And that sort of helps with my quota of because the ideal situation for a Chucky movie, of course, is to see it with an audience.
Right.
I mean, they're designed to be audience movies. So I recommend that people, have people over.
Yeah. Let's have some Chucky parties going. That's cool. How far, the thing I've always been impressed about is how far ahead do you think about, I mean, obviously you want to focus on the movie at hand and make the best possible movie you can, but I love that you've always got seeds for what could be next. And so how far ahead do you think of each movie? Because I know after Seed for a long time, there was the prospect of remaking it and starting from scratch. But Curse, what impressed me about Curse is it played almost like a remake, and then all of a sudden it's for lack of a better term, fan service, where all of a sudden it wrapped in a beautiful way into all the other movies. And then again, there's a little tail end thing after the credits, which immediately set up the new movie. And so I wonder, how much do you think about Chucky and where it can go? How far in advance? Are you already thinking of the next one?
I am as you probably will anticipate, I'm embarrassed to admit it's years.
Yeah.
Years. I think about it all the time. Yeah. I mean, I have, when you're, I imagine it's probably similar to being a showrunner for a television show. You become, sort of the custodian of a franchise and of a character. So you're constantly thinking about it. And then the characters pile up and their relationships pile up over decades now. And so I'm a fan too. I mean, I'm a fan of Chucky.
Right.
It's just even if I hadn't written and directed these movies, I would be into it. And I like to think one of the distinguishing features of the franchise is that it has a relatively coherent mythology spanning 7 movies and 30 years.
Right.
So, when you do that, I'm constantly thinking about ideas for Chucky movies, Chucky scenes, set piece kills, characters intersecting, new characters, all of that. And that's one of the nice things about having a franchise is if any idea maybe doesn't work for the movie that you're doing, you just put in a file and, that could be useful in a decade. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm thinking about it all the time. And all of that was, it's very designed, and the new one, does a similar thing. And yes, I have an idea for where to go. And
Don, you told me once, I think, that when you were a kid, you were obsessed with movie sequels.
I was. I became, I think, officially obsessed with movie sequels the summer of '78, because being a horror fan, it was Jaws 2 and Damien Omen 2.
Oh, wow.
I saw a double bill of those at the New Bev, actually. Those two movies. That's the Omen 2 and Jaws 2 was awesome.
Yeah, Angel went to that.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It was pretty awesome.
That was a beautiful summer.
Yeah.
And I remember reading I had read the Jaws log, of course, but then there was the Jaws 2 log. And as I'm sure you guys obviously know probably better than I do, the very troubled shooting history of Jaws 2. But, when I'm a 14-year-old kid and I see it, I don't know any of that beforehand. I was just like, oh my God. And so it's just suddenly, and it's interesting that it's also Universal specifically. It's like Universal horror sequels. Mm-hmm. And just reading about how John Hancock was fired and Jeannot Schwartz came in and it's like, wait, and the cast is already, and it's just it's this job that you have to do. Yeah. And I remember a quote from that book where he said, however it does, I think I deserve credit for pulling it off. Yeah. He said. And I, as a kid, that just made a huge impression on me. And I mean, this may sound mercenary and I don't mean it to, but it's just I was fascinated about the day-to-day business of going about that, how do you make a sequel to something that people love?
When you saw Jaws 2, it's you didn't know there was any production problem. You see a movie and it's oh, this is great. I love this movie.
Right. But then you delve into that book and then you learn about it and then you can kind of see actually that sand That's Florida. That sand is that probably bothers you guys in the way it bothers me. But that is Florida. That is not Martha's Vineyard.
Right.
I'm very offended by that. And it just becomes part of your education of like, and your fascination of like, what's it like to work in this industry.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me you were interested in serialized TV way back when.
I guess I was without really knowing it. Yeah. Back when serialized TV was featured.
Was movies.
Yeah.
Did they ever try to turn Chucky into a TV series?
Not yet.
Okay. No end Chucky
Keyword
house.
yes.
Crossover.
Not yet.
Well, how do you feel about, you said you're a fan of Chucky yourself. I remember it's probably around the time the third one came out. Like I was a huge comic book guy too. And Innovation Comics were doing all these spin-offs of Freddy and Jason. And so I remember the Child's Play comic books.
They were awesome.
I thought they're kind of fun. So I was wondering if it's cool for you to see something that you had a hand in creating, just, take on a life of its own with another writer doing it.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm geeky enough to like love the paperback tie-ins back, because I'm old enough that like we had those for Child's Play 2 and Child's Play 3.
You had like full novelization.
Yes. Written by a guy named Matthew Costello.
Now, are the novelizations like the film, or is this one of those things where like they're they get an early draft of the script and it's kind of didn't turn out like that, or are they pretty similar?
They're pretty similar, but this particular writer, Matthew Costello, he did do some inventing, and I encouraged that because I having been a fan of this stuff. It's like, oh no, you should like definitely do your own thing because that's going to become part of the fun of the franchise. So it's like, wait a minute, in Child's Play 2, that doesn't happen. I love that stuff.
Does that if something from a novelization, does that inspire your own mythology or?
I can't I can't think of a specific example. It's been so long since I read those books, but I do remember one detail that he wrote was that Charles Lee Ray as a child had this deathly fear of children.
Oh.
Like he was scared of other children while he was a child.
Yeah, he just didn't like children. And I thought, it was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Because I remember when I was young tracking down the novelization of Halloween, the original Halloween. And there's like chapters and chapters of him as a kid at Smith's Grove. None of it's in the movie.
Because they got to fill out, I'm sure they have a page quota or whatever.
Yeah, and there's like tons of it. And then it ended up being in, I guess they did a Halloween comic book that I think Dan Farrens might have written, who wrote the sixth one. And like the comic book was all that. It was the stuff that was in the original novelization, but like kind of expanded on. So I love getting those little extra stories within this mythology and all. Let's talk about that, because the thing that I remember about the Child's Play movies, in particular 2 and 3, and again, this is kind of, I don't know how far into your career it was, but kind of at the beginning, those movies came out like lightning. I mean, 2 came out right away, and not even a year later, I think 3 was out in like 10 months later or something.
And I think it shows, honestly.
But in retrospect, how did you, as a screenwriter, how did you adapt to that? I mean, did you just think, well, this is just the way it goes?
Absolutely. It was exactly that. It gave me an extremely inaccurate idea of what life as a screenwriter was like, because I transferred from Columbia University against my parents' strong objections. They thought, like, you don't know what you're doing. The idea of having a career in movies, it's probably not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And I did it. And I wrote the first Chucky when I was a student at UCLA, and I sold it, and I got, I sold it, and I got my first agent. The script sold, the movie got made, the movie was a hit. They hired me to do a sequel. The sequel got made, and this all happened in quick succession. So I was kind of like, this isn't that hard. But it wasn't long after that, after the abject failure of Child's Play 3 at the box office, that I did learn a lesson in how there are fallow periods, and it's like a roller coaster and up and down.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think was with 3? Was it the fact that it was kind of rushed at that point? Like, if you had more time, do you think 3 could have been a different movie, or I
feel this is very valiant of me to be the person, and I'm using an appropriate metaphor for that movie, the guy to fall on the grenade for that movie. But I think it is, I actually do think it's appropriate that I do think that the failings of that movie are script-based primarily. I think there are a couple of casting things that I personally wouldn't have done. For example, it sounds like you know the movie well. You know, there's a character who's like the colonel, who's like the big, you know, he's supposed to be like Arlie Ermy.
Yeah.
And the whole idea, he's this hard ass, and he takes one look at a doll that says boo, literally boo, and he has a heart attack and dies. Right. But they cast not Arlie Ermy or an Arlie Ermy type. They cast a guy who looked like he just might die of a heart attack. So it's just like, it's just like it didn't really work. Yeah. But I thought I was being smart in aging the character a few years, because I felt like we just sort of tapped out the potential of what you could do with that kid as a toddler.
Right.
And it would be more interesting to give him teenage concerns. And again, being a Damien Omen 2 fan, I thought that the military school setting was interesting for Chucky, because, by then Chucky was already getting branded in pop culture as kind of an anti-authoritarian figure and someone who bucks the status quo. And there was a lot of opportunity for that. I just think I wrote it too fast. I had to write it too fast. It just fits a little uninspired, but it's interesting over the years hearing how like certain movies rise up in terms of like, this is their favorite or they're not. Fairly consistently, the least favorites are 3 and Seed. And for the longest time, very consistently, the first one was always the favorite. But now it seems like Child's Play 2.
For me, it's Child's Play 2.
Yeah,
Child's Play 2 was the one that I watched on USA when I was a kid all the time, and watched the teacher get killed in the closet. And that made an impression on me, a really big impression.
Oh, cool.
That one was. It was and is my favorite. Plus the end.
And a lot. The Factory, which was
great.
That was originally in my script for the first one. There's an illustration of that idea. It's like when ideas don't make it into the movie, you just recycle them and put them back. And like in my original script, the babysitter's death, Dinah Manoff's death, was in the bubble bath with the bubbles. Tom Holland changed that and had her sent her out the window. That was cool too. But I always loved that set piece. And I thought, actually, it's way better to do it in a movie with this tone, with Jennifer Tilly in the tub. Because if that's the way Jennifer Tilly should die.
Yeah. While watching Bride of Frankenstein.
While watching Bride of Frankenstein.
Great.
I have read so many love letters to Seed, though. Like so many people who were just really connected with that one.
Well, that's the one that honestly, its reputation has grown the most, arguably because it had the furthest to go, possibly. I mean, I think that movie is so fundamentally comedic and farcical. It's a farce. I mean, it's literally a farce. I mean, it's slamming doors and all of that. And I think that turned a lot of people off, I guess. I'm sorry. But it as a gay guy, it's really... I love the fact that over the years, as the audience or people who saw that movie as children, the character of Glenn really meant something to them. And that's very cool. And also when the subject of Seed of Chucky comes up, I always, very defensively have to say, well, Pulitzer Prize winning critic Wesley Morris loved the movie. So who the fuck are you? Because I still get tweets from people going, dude, really looking forward to Cult of Chucky, but you must know you really fucked up Seed of Chucky.
Well, John Waters is in it, so you got that too. So.
I feel like all your Omen references, I don't know if I'm reading into this, but I feel like you're giving me signals that we are going to see a Chucky and Sam Neill film. Is this right?
Ooh.
Chucky and Sam Neill.
That we might see a Chucky Sam Neill film? Because
I can confirm that I love that idea.
I think that would be those two worlds coming together in the best possible way.
Although I must admit, I'm not a huge fan of Final Conflict. Although he's great.
You're right. He's perfectly cast, but he's not. Yeah,
but
and he's kind of playing the same character in Possession. One of the versions of him is the Antichrist of some kind. Yeah. Which is, I just love Sam Neill.
Yeah.
And I was just looking for a way to bring him into the episode.
I love that idea.
All right, so let's get nerdy for a second, and I forgive us non-soundtrack people that don't care about this shit. But this is like one of the main.
Are there any?
This is the one. Like, I was like, if Don's ever on the show, this is specifically what I want to ask about. And this was actually when it really stood out to me when I bought the last box set with Curse in it, which is for the most part, every Child's Play film has a completely different composer with a completely different, distinct kind of style, and every one of them is unique to that movie. And so, I mean, I don't know what the question is other than, hey, it was really cool that you used so-and-so.
When do you want to start with Pino Donaggio?
Well, sure. Okay, yeah. So Pino did that one. But let's start with Seed, only because that was the first one you directed yourself.
And that's Pino Donaggio.
Oh, did he do that one? I thought it was.
He did. I think it's rumored that.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I looked at it wrong. That is absolutely correct. But no, I mean, like I love the main theme that that Joe Renzetti did for the first one. I think my favorite might be the music from 2 from Graham Bell, because it's got kind of that Puppet Master, Full Moon, Richard Band quality to it.
Well, it's a huge, that's like an 80-piece orchestra.
Yeah.
It's a really big score, and it was very intentional. The idea, and it was meant, and I think it does function somewhat wittily in a way that this diminutive little thing has this huge orchestral, dramatic, like Frankenstein kind of sound. And that was, the director, John LaFia, who did such a great job with that movie, apparently the best job. But he did. And that was John's idea to do that. And it was appropriate for that movie. I loved Graham, and we brought him back for Bride. The director of Child's Play 3, for whatever reason, elected to bring in his own composers, who were the guys who did Baywatch.
Right.
Wow.
Interesting choice.
It wouldn't have been mine, although it's a not uninteresting score. It was the first. I'm wrong. I was, because the Child's Play 1 was an electronic score primarily, and I think a Child's Play, the Joe Renzetti score for the first one, very interesting because it's so percussive. It's so, it's really an unusual sound, and not one that you would expect for a movie about a killer doll. That it's really. It's just a lot of booming timpani. It's hard to describe, but it was original and interesting.
Yeah. So when you go to direct yours, I assume Pino, because of your love of De Palma movies and things like that. But was there ever any other choice, or are you just like, no, I have to work with Pino?
It was that. I mean, of course, as a Brian De Palma, a lifelong De Palma fan, is directing his first movie. And Seed of Chucky was technically and legally a European film. We shot it in Romania. We did all our post in the UK. So we had to have a European composer. So it was an unusual opportunity that was lining up, that the studio might be into this idea, even though he doesn't speak a word of English. And I had to go to Venice and talk to him. And of course, it was one of the biggest thrills of my life, and remains so. And we've, remained in touch and are friendly. It was thrilling, and because of a lot of the ways we communicated, because my Italian is pretty poor, but better than his English. But we communicated via his music. And because I had such an encyclopedic knowledge of his music that I could say in your score for home movies or whatever super obscure Pino Donaggio specific thing. And of course, Pino, who wouldn't love that? So one of the most amazing nights working on that movie, spotting the movie with Pino in Venice, staying at his place on the Grand Canal, which you pull up in a water taxi. And then we went out to dinner one night, and he's taking me around through the canals of Venice, and we're just whistling the theme from Don't Look Now together. Just, it's awesome.
That was his first score, I think, right?
I'm sorry?
That was his first score.
Don't Look Now?
Don't Look Now. I think
yes, it was.
Yeah, it was actually his first score.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of amazing to start your career with a movie like that.
And that's what, De Palma found him because of Nicholas Roeg. Yeah. And I found him because of De Palma. And he's a great guy, and he did I loved the Chucky theme that he did for that movie. I loved all of it. When it came time to do Curse, I kept in touch with him and I wanted to work with him again, but we didn't really have the budget on that movie to like deal with, having to go to Europe and record the score. And Pino he demands an orchestra. Mm-hmm. He wasn't just going to do an electronic score anyway. But again, opportunity, since Curse of Chucky was a reboot anyway, kind of a reset tonally, it seemed appropriate to get someone new. And of course, I'm a huge Joe Renzetti fan. It's like, I wonder if he would be interested in doing this. And we met and got along. And I actually think Cult of Chucky is even better than Curse of Chucky.
Oh, and Joe LaDuca, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so
did I say Renzetti? Because there are two Joes. Oh, God, that's awful.
And Joe LaDuca, of course, did the Evil Dead stuff, which is, that's amazing. So, it's cool. I mean, I liked his, I think when Curse came out, I might have poked you on Twitter being like, can we get that on vinyl, that soundtrack? Because it's great.
We tried for Cult as well. But I mean, that's the downside of the lower budgets. It's just hard. I mean, we would need, like a Blumhouse operation of people who are really invested in it in the way that you guys are, to get the vinyl. But we tried.
All right. There's a lot of soundtrack guys that listen to this show that should consider it. What about, for both of you, what about, you both said you knew Fiona. And so, I mean, last person I would have thought that would pop up in the Child's Play series is the daughter of Brad Dourif. So when you met her, did you think of her immediately for this role? Like, what came first, the role or her? Like, did you write it for her?
I didn't write it for her, no. I mean, basically, she auditioned and got the part. I mean, I was having lunch with Brad one day. I had met Fiona a couple of times glancingly over the years, but not in a way that she would remember because she was just a kid.
Yeah.
But having known and worked with Brad, of course, I talked to him and I was aware that Fiona was on True Blood, which I was a fan of. And so, she was a bit on my radar. And so Brad said, hey, you should read Fiona for something. I said, yeah, you're right. So she originally came in and read for the bitchy sister role that Danielle Basutti ended up playing. And Fiona was really good, but I looked at her and I was like, I think she could be the lead.
Oh.
Because I had read a lot of actresses, a lot of really good actresses, and I just didn't believe them in the wheelchair because they just were too well adjusted somehow. But Fiona, there's just something about her eyes that conveys, she's just got automatic tension. And it just seemed like, I'm not saying it's true of her in real life, but she conveyed pain. And I believed it. And I just I just know that she just has her physiognomy, her face. I think she's so beautiful in such a unique way. And to me, she had a quality that reminded me of Amy Irving, actually, in Carrie and the Fury, because she has these eyes that are just electric. But she also, and this is something that also not all actors have, a lot of good actors don't have it, is this quality where I believe that supernatural things can happen to that person. And you can put this person in this movie and I'm absolutely going to believe this crazy shit happening around them. And that doesn't always work, but it does with Fiona because she just has there's just something about her face and her energy. It reminds me a little of Michelle Pfeiffer in a way.
And meanwhile, I knew her at this time, and she said, "This is the most ridiculous thing." I actually auditioned for a Child's Play movie, and I'm never going to get it. It's like ridiculous.
And when I had her come back and read for Nika, and I was like, oh my God. And then of course my mind is going, this is so cool. It wasn't planned, but who would have thought that the perfect person was in our own backyard, and then it gave this new additional layer to their scenes together. It's just all so interesting. But then I got afraid that maybe I was getting excited for the wrong reasons, and I was afraid that the studio was going to say, "Oh no, this is too gimmicky." But Fiona knocked it out of the park. I mean, she did an amazing job, obviously. And so then the new one, of course, I wrote it for her, and I wrote it in close concert with her in a way, just, over the intervening years talking. I mean, we were even talking about it when we were still shooting Curse of Chucky.
Well, you guys became good friends on Curse of Chucky.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're really, really good friends. Yeah. Yeah, and she's very smart, and she's, she really is in a way on Cult of Chucky a bit of an unofficial producer on the movie because she's like someone whose counsel I seek as much as anyone else's. I mean, because she has great taste. She always gave me great notes on scripts, and what she's done with you as well. She's very smart. Scripts too. Yeah,
for sure.
Wow. Well, in the same regard, we have to talk about Jennifer Tilly, because I think a lot of people forget that she doesn't come into the franchise until the 4th entry.
Yeah.
And yet she forgets that. Yeah. Because she's constantly like giving interviews where she's like, well, in the first Chucky movie, and I have to go, honey, that was actually the 4th. And she, I just saw an interview with her the other day, and she's like, it's like, I've never seen the first 3 Chucky movies. It's like, it wouldn't occur to her to see that. Funny. That's so her.
But obviously now she's so synonymous with Tiffany, but when you wrote and conceived of the idea of the Bride of Chucky, was that kind of what you had in mind, or did she bring it alive in a complete?
Oh no, I wrote it for her. I
wrote it. You had her in mind from the get-go?
Yeah, I didn't know her at that point. I'd never met her, but I definitely thought this is the perfect person, just in every way, because she had the sexy demeanor. She had the distinctive voice. It was just, she was an Oscar nominee, as was Brad. It just felt right. So, and of course, as I'm writing it, it's never going to happen because these things never do, but it did.
Wow.
So it was really, really, that was like, because Bride of Chucky to me, I always feel like this is like one of the ones where everything went right, or so many things went right. Because Ronnie Yu was one of them. He did such an amazing job. Peter Powell, Graham Revell, and Jennifer, and she's, pretty indispensable at this point.
Yeah. No, I love Bride. Unrelated question, since Brad Dourif is so well known for this, favorite Brad Dourif performance not in a Child's Play movie?
Exorcist 3.
Hell yes.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Yeah.
Gemini Killer.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
Exorcist 3, also, of course, the best jump scare.
Oh, yeah.
Or my favorite jump scare.
2. I would say there are 2.
There are 2 great ones, but there's one that's like.
Yeah, that one's legendary.
You mean 2 in Exorcist 3?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's one that's like world class.
Yeah, the world class one. I actually have a portrait of that above my desk.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I was just discussing that scene with an Uber driver on the way over here. Like, he was just like literally a horror fan. He goes, did you ever see Exorcist 3? I went, oh my God, yes, you're a serious fan. He goes,
we are Legion.
Yeah.
Well, also his monologue in that movie is one of the all-time great
monologue.
villain. No, not the Carp monologue. Dourif's monologue,
is equally awesome.
You're gonna watch as I.
And you guys are aware that was all added later after they had a whole cut.
Because we got to have an exorcist in there, or an exorcism. So let's get Dourif.
Yeah, have you seen the? I mean, it's only kind of VHS quality, but there is the original cut on that Blu-ray.
I've never seen it,
and it's great because it's a completely. Dourif has said, he says it on the disc, that he thought he gave a much better performance that first time than what ended up in the movie.
That sounds like Brad.
But and it's worth watching for that, just to see a slightly different take, because he was the character from start to finish in the first cut of the movie before they brought Jason Miller back.
That's another good one, since we were talking about films to watch during October. That's another really good one for October,
3.
just because it's so scary. You don't need to see the second Exorcist. Just go in.
I'm hoping for Exorcist 3 ties in Exorcist Season 2, because I love how well...
I believe they've said they're going to be. Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
That's the explicit influence.
That's exciting to me.
And the correct answer here was Wise Blood, but that's okay.
The
church without God.
I was going to say that too. I mean, but Exorcist 3 seemed more appropriate to the context.
But Southern Gothic almost counts,
Oh yeah, it's a great movie. and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is not too shabby either. That thing.
Blue Velvet.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God,
he's in that.
I mean, he kind of is background, but he's good background. He's always unnerving. Whatever he's doing, it always seems just slightly off in the role, which is great. It's a great presence to bring.
Well, I don't want to hit a sour spot, but at the same time, I feel it's important that we advocate, especially to our audience, how important it is that they support this movie by buying the Blu-ray and renting it in the proper channels.
And not watching the pirated.
Yes. And basically I wanted to briefly address that, because it is a challenge to filmmakers. You spend all this time. I mean, it's been years just getting this movie together. And I mean, even the argument, I am like, I'm a techno weenie when it comes to downloading this stuff anyway, like even legitimately. So it's like, I can't in my mind imagine there being any valid excuse for just stealing a movie.
I don't
know if it's just a younger generation thing.
I think that's part of it, because this was really my first experience with it. I mean, it may have happened on Curse, but I wasn't aware of it if it did.
I think this far in advance is what's really the hard part.
But my impression was that a lot of the people that were tweeting about it, it just literally doesn't even occur to them that it's wrong. That it's just, that's the world now. They just, it's the free market. And it's just out there, and that's just the way people think. Not all. I mean, there were a lot of people who were crowing about it, and then of course there are the inevitable people who are like, I watch it and I can tell you it sucked, so don't bother. Yeah. And it's like, does it make you feel good to darken my day?
There were equally on the other side people who were deleting Facebook followers, and I did, because people who we saw tweeting about it or posting about it, immediately I was like, well, you watched a bootleg version.
It's like,
I don't want to be your friend.
Like, now watching. And I was like, how the fuck are you now watching it? Like, you're admitting to what you're doing. And it's like,
I have a press DVD, guys. Don't delete me.
I pre-ordered it because that's the way I roll. But, it's, I don't even like debating with people online. Like, I'll do it in person, but like one of the arguments that I keep hearing is like, well, I'm going to buy it anyway.
They do say that.
Still doesn't make it right. A lot
of them say that.
And I know for me, I mean, I don't know, maybe people are set up a different way, but like, I can't stand watching shit on my computer. Like, I need it to be on my 60-inch TV and my own setup. Yeah.
And, it's
sound
like,
right.
But that's the thing, is that like the kids today, they don't care about the quality of it, which is so frustrating when you take the time, as Nick obviously does as well on Channel Zero with his directors. You take the time to compose a shot and make it elegant, and just to know that a lot of people they're going to be watching it on their phone, and they
cut to David Lynch sound clip.
Yeah, it is frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's messaging. A lot of it. Look, I can only imagine being born into a period where Netflix already existed, where everything is free. You have no skin in the game. There's just endless movies and content, and you just push a button, and there it is. You can turn it off whenever you want. Who cares if you finish a movie?
It's not really free, but they think it's free.
It's a feeling. And so I think the messaging is they haven't seen the downside of this yet. And it's not the individual punishment. The downside is you don't get another Chucky.
Well, that's the most ominous thing, because I'm not experienced enough to know what impact this could have on our business.
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, it seems like it could be significant. I mean, I've heard that there are, views in the millions. It's 7 figures of people who have seen it. So that sounds significant to me. And if that means I don't get to do another movie or do my Chucky TV show, then I'm going to find all of those people who outed themselves, and I took screenshots of all of them, and I'm going to hound them down.
Yeah, we need to make it clear to horror fans that if you don't support the things you love, they will not keep going, and they'll stop existing, because your money does impact the future of that, especially the word franchise.
Yes, completely.
And
series.
I think you shared Don's tweet, and your wording was perfect. Is if you
think you're a horror fan,
you're not a horror fan,
and you watch this legally, you are actually not a fan.
I saw that. I really appreciate that.
And
that
it's
was
actually
very cool.
It's really hurting the industry, because I see people online bitching all the time about, like, why are budgets so low on horror films right now? Why aren't we getting anything new or anything original or anyone taking any risks? Well, there has to be money for that. And if you're expecting free content, it's not going to be original and it's not going to be expensive. So it's support the industry that you want to provide good stuff. Right. And they will give you good stuff back.
I imagine we're preaching to the choir. I hope.
Yes, I hope so.
To an extent, though, but I think a lot of young people who are really good people and like good listeners just have done it out of habit. And because I hear from them, I meet them, I go, really? And they go, well, I just don't understand what's the negative. And you start talking about it, they go, oh, yeah.
And I have to remember that time,
there's
too.
There's a sense of entitlement.
Because when I was a junior in college, Napster came out. And I remember that for a hot minute, it was suddenly like, holy shit. Do you guys remember Napster? Am I really dating myself?
No.
For a hot minute, I downloaded everything I could. Led Zeppelin entire catalog ever. I had that like immediately.
Well, no, but
just because we could. And then it was suddenly revealed that, like, okay, this is wrong. We shouldn't be doing this. And
I'm gonna bring this out because somebody actually called us on this online. And for me, Napster was all about getting live performances or B-sides or things that I couldn't get. You know, like I would never download a full album because it always sounded like shit anyway. And it's like, well, why would I want to listen to a shitty third copy of, you know, whatever? It was more for me to find, like, you know, for lack of a better term, bootlegs and stuff. And so somebody had said to us when we were making this argument, like, well, you guys talk about watching bootlegs and stuff all the time.
I only watch bootlegs if it's not available in any other format.
It's, you know, it's the bootleg thing is kind of part of our upbringing with conventions in the sense of like, all right, here's an obscure made for TV movie that only aired once and we will never see it on DVD or whatever. And I'm at a convention and there it is. And it's like somebody taped it off TV and that's like, all right, well, I'll buy that because I will never, ever get to see this thing that I've only heard about.
And to justify it a little and then not to be too big an ego on the idea. But if we're doing it in that situation, there's a chance that thing might actually get a second life because we're going to beat a drum for it. It's a totally different thing when it's a new product that is being stolen.
Yes.
And that's why it's just a huge difference. And it really is. And I think it's super important to like, I feel like film schools and stuff are places have to do part of the education.
I'm teaching a class on Friday about this because I always do. I open my classes at USC with a current event in the film industry, and it's usually like whatever's the hot button that week, whatever film got argued about, who did we cast that, you know, we pissed somebody off about. And so this week I'm opening up with piracy. Would you like to come talk? I'll hit you after the show.
Just film a video on your phone right now.
Public service message.
But yes, please support the movie and support Channel Zero, which is now airing on Sci-Fi, and it's every Friday night?
Every Wednesday night.
Yes.
Tonight.
Literally right now.
That's the problem. That's why we have to miss
it. I'm so sorry. I'm a DVR guy, so I just know it's waiting for me.
Yeah. I get everything off Amazon.
Does that mean, because you made the first two back to back, does that mean the third is already in
the third
writing stage?
Has been shot already.
Okay. Oh, nice. So we're guaranteed a third season, guys.
Yes, there is a third installment coming. I am forbidden from revealing what it is, but it will come out soon.
Man,
nice.
Did you say any details about it?
Like the director or anything?
No, there's a minder from Sci-Fi sitting at the end of the table, shaking his head at me,
shaking and judging.
No, we're gonna reveal the actual. There's actually been a number of working titles posted on the internet, some more accurate than others. And a lot of guesses to it, some more accurate than others. But we are going to announce what the title is, the full cast, the director, and the story that it's inspired by
right now.
Shortly after I'm going to tell you. Let me turn off the microphone.
Some of it's public record, though. Some of the casts.
Yeah, there are some really exciting cast elements that have not been announced yet.
Okay.
All right.
George Wendt. I'm just going to sit here and guess people.
He's going to just start naming people. Sam Neill.
Mancini's nodding over here like, oh, wow, like there's other cast members. He knows exactly who they are. He had dinner with them in Winnipeg.
Yeah, it's like, I just so want to talk about it.
The only thing I want to know is, did you do the same thing where you just went again another totally bold direction from the previous two?
It's radically different from the first two.
I love that, and I think keep that up, man. That just keeps it fresh.
We have another great director who you're not familiar with yet, but you will be, and it's somebody from the indie world who is really cool.
Nice.
All right, so Channel Zero No End House is Wednesdays on Sci-Fi. Cult of Chucky is October 3rd, correct?
Tuesday, but it's out there. It's out there.
Well,
I'm not talking about the pirate stuff. I'm talking about like people, and I don't really fully understand this. Like people who ordered their Blu-rays, they came early. Like people who bought them legitimately, they got them.
I ordered my Blu-ray. I don't have it yet.
I don't have mine either. I don't have one.
I'm waiting.
They sent out press copies earlier this week, so I got
I hear it's pretty good. It's rumored that Don Mancini directed it.
Directed by Don Mancini.
And again, Don, we've been wanting to have you on for such a long time. So thank you for finally
thank you so much for having me.
And talking music with me and stuff. That was cool. So
loved it.
I'd like to thank our sponsors, Knoxville Horror Film Festival, ZipRecruiter, and Shudder. If you are interested in advertising on the show, please reach out to us at shockwaves@blumhouse.com. Again, that's shockwaves@blumhouse.com.
Cool. See you next week.
Thanks.